What did a real Neanderthal look like? The image most people have is wrong. It's a caricature. A hunched, hairy, brutish ape man, dragging a club with knuckles scraping the ground. This picture is a fossil itself, an artifact of old science and older prejudices. It's time to get rid of it. The truth is much more complex and much more human. To understand what a Neanderthal looked like, we have to understand where that first wrong image came from. It started with a specific skeleton. He's called the Old Man of La Chapelle aux Saints. He was found in a cave in France in 1908, and he was old for a Neanderthal, maybe 40. His bones told a story of a hard life. He had severe arthritis in his spine. His jaw was mostly toothless, he was bent and broken, he had survived for years like this, which tells you something important. Someone must have been taking care of him. They were feeding him, protecting him. But that's not the story the scientists told. The man who studied the skeleton was a French paleontologist named Marcelin Boule. Boule looked at the curved spine, the stooped posture caused by arthritis, and took it as the natural state for all Neanderthals. He saw the large brow ridge, the long skull, the big nose, and he didn't see a variation of a human. He saw something more primitive, more ape-like. He concluded that Neanderthals were a failed evolutionary dead end. They were dim-witted, shuffling brutes who couldn't even stand up straight. He drew a picture that matched his conclusion, and that picture stuck. It ended up in museums, in textbooks, in movies. For decades, Boule's vision was our vision of a Neanderthal. It was a powerful image, but it was based on a sick old man and the biases of the time. Today, we know better. We have many more skeletons. We have better technology. We have DNA, and we have a more open mind. We've thrown out Boule's drawing and started over piece by piece from the bones up. So let's build a real Neanderthal. Start with the head. This is where the most striking differences are. If you put a modern human skull next to a Neanderthal skull, you'd see the contrast right away. Our skulls are generally tall and rounded, like a soccer ball. A Neanderthal skull is long and low, more like a football or a loaf of bread. This shape is called a cranial vault. Inside that long skull was a brain. And it was big. On average, a Neanderthal brain was actually larger than the average brain of a modern human. Now, a bigger brain doesn't automatically mean smarter. The organization is what matters. And their brain was shaped differently because their skull was shaped differently. The occipital lobe at the back of the head was larger. This is where the visual cortex is. Some scientists think Neanderthals might have had a larger part of their brain dedicated to vision. It makes sense for a hunter-gatherer living in the dim light of Ice Age Europe, needing to spot prey or predators from a distance. Their parietal lobes, which handle sensory integration and spatial awareness, were also proportioned differently. What all this means for their intelligence, or their way of thinking, is a huge debate. But the idea of them as simple-minded is gone. They had the hardware for complex thought. Let's move to the face. The most famous feature is the brow ridge. It's a classic. Neanderthals had a prominent double-arched brow ridge, a solid bar of bone over their eyes. We modern humans have a flatter forehead, with only slight bumps of a brow. Why did they have such a big one? Nobody knows for sure. There are a few theories. One is that it was structural support, their faces were built for serious chewing power, and the brow ridge might have helped dissipate the stress from their powerful jaw muscles. Another idea is that it had something to do with their huge sinuses, or maybe it was just a social signal, like the antlers on a deer. A way to look intimidating or to show status. It might even be none of those things. It could just be a result of genetic drift, a feature that developed and stuck around by chance. Whatever the reason, it was there, and it would have given their face a very different, more imposing look than ours. Below the brow, the whole middle of their face jutted forward. This is called mid-facial prognathism. Imagine grabbing the nose and cheeks of a human skull and pulling them forward. That's kind of what a Neanderthal face looked like. It created a swept-back look for their cheekbones. And at the center of this projecting face was a nose, a very big nose. The nasal opening in their skull is huge compared to ours. Again, why the big nose? The old theory was that it was an adaptation to the cold. A big nasal cavity would have more surface area to warm and moisten the frigid, dry air of the Ice Age before it hit their lungs. It was a built-in radiator. This idea is still around, but there's a newer one that's gaining ground. A Neanderthal's body was a high-energy machine. They were muscular, constantly active, and had a high metabolism to stay warm. But that kind of lifestyle requires a lot of oxygen. The huge nose might have been less about warming air and more about simply pulling in massive volumes of it, like a high-performance air intake on an engine. They were breathing for a living, and their nose was built for it. Now let's go down to the mouth. Their jaws were large and strong. Their teeth were also bigger than ours, especially the front incisors. And when we look at their teeth, we see a lot of wear and tear, not just from eating, but from use. They have scratches and little chips on their front teeth that suggest they were using their mouths as a third hand. Gripping hides while they scraped them, holding sinew while they worked on it, clamping down on a piece of wood while they carved it. Their teeth were tools, and one last thing about the face, the chin, or rather, the lack of one. Modern humans are the only primates who have a true projecting chin, that little bony nub at the bottom of your jaw. Neanderthals didn't have one. Their jawline sloped back from their teeth, it didn't jut forward. It's a subtle difference, but it's a key anatomical marker of being a Homo sapiens. Nobody is quite sure why we have chins, and they didn't. Like the brow ridge, it might just be a side effect of how our faces evolved to be smaller and flatter. So you have this head, long and low, a prominent brow, a big projecting nose and mid-face. A receding chin. It's a distinctly human face, but a different model, not an ape. Not a monster, just different. Now let's look at the body. The stereotype is of a stooped, clumsy creature. That's wrong. Based on their skeleton, we know they stood fully upright. Their posture was our posture. But their build was not our build. If a typical modern human is built like a distance runner, a Neanderthal was built like a wrestler or a powerlifter. They were incredibly robust. Their bones were thicker and denser than ours. When you look at their skeletons, you can see the places where muscles attached. And these attachment points are huge. It tells us they were carrying an immense amount of muscle. Their entire frame was built for power and resilience. They had to be strong. Their lives depended on it. They were hunting large Ice Age animals, sometimes up close. A confrontational hunting style with spears meant you had to be able to wrestle with a giant deer, or a wild horse. Their bones show a lot of healed fractures, especially on the arms and head, similar to the injury patterns you see on modern rodeo riders. They lived a rough physical life, and their bodies were built to take a beating. Their overall body shape was also different. They were generally shorter and stockier than us. An average male might have stood around 5 feet, 5 inches tall. Females were a few inches shorter. But they were much heavier and wider. Their chests were huge and barrel-shaped. Their hips were broad. Their limbs, especially their lower arms and lower legs, were short relative to their upper arms and thighs. This body plan is a classic adaptation to a cold climate. It's explained by 2 biological rules, Bergmann's rule and Allen's rule. Bergmann's rule says that in colder climates, animals of the same species tend to have larger, bulkier bodies. A more compact, spherical shape has less surface area relative to its volume, which means it loses less heat. Allen's rule says that animals in colder climates tend to have shorter limbs. Again, this reduces surface area and helps conserve body heat. A Neanderthal's stocky, short-limbed, barrel-chested physique was perfect for staying warm in a world of ice and snow. They were human radiators, built to generate and retain heat, so you have this powerful, compact body. A wide torso, strong shoulders, short, muscular legs. They would have moved with a kind of grounded power. Their wide hips and the different shape of their ankle joints might have given them a slightly different gait than ours, but they walked efficiently. They were not slow, shuffling brutes. They were powerful, endurance-adapted walkers and hunters, perfectly suited to trekking across the Ice Age landscape. So far, we have the skeleton, the shape of the head and the body, but what about the soft tissues? What about the skin, the hair, the eyes? For a long time, this was pure guesswork. Artists would draw them with thick, shaggy fur like an animal. Their skin was usually depicted as a dull, pasty white or a dirty gray. But now we have something incredible. We have Neanderthal DNA. In the last couple of decades, scientists have managed to extract and sequence the genome of several Neanderthals from fragments of their ancient bones. This is a revolutionary development. It's like finding the instruction manual for building a Neanderthal. And in that manual, we are finding clues about their appearance. One of the first big discoveries was about pigmentation. Scientists found a variant of a gene called MC1R in 2 Neanderthal skeletons from Spain and Italy. In modern humans, this specific gene variant interferes with the production of dark pigment and often results in red hair and fair skin. This was a bombshell, the first hard evidence that at least some Neanderthals were redheads with pale skin. This makes perfect sense. Pale skin is an advantage in regions with less sunlight, like Northern Europe. The skin needs to synthesize vitamin D from the sun, and lighter skin does this more efficiently. It's the same reason many modern Europeans have fair skin. Neanderthals lived in these latitudes for hundreds of thousands of years, so it's logical they would have adapted in the same way. But this doesn't mean all Neanderthals were redheads. That was just one gene variant found in a few individuals. Later genetic studies found other Neanderthals who likely had dark hair and a more olive or darker complexion. Just like modern humans, Neanderthals were a diverse population spread across a vast area, from Spain to Siberia. Their appearance would have varied. There were probably brown-haired Neanderthals, black-haired Neanderthals, and red-haired Neanderthals. There were likely pale-skinned ones in the north, and darker-skinned ones in the sunnier Middle East. The idea of a single, uniform Neanderthal look is just as wrong as the idea of a single modern human look. They were a species, not a monolith. What about their eyes? The DNA evidence isn't as clear on eye color yet, but given the variations in their hair and skin, it's very likely they had a range of eye colors too. Brown, maybe hazel, or even lighter shades are all possible. So let's put all the pieces together. Let's try to see a real Neanderthal. Imagine you meet one, a man. He's shorter than you might expect, maybe 5.5 feet tall, but he looks incredibly wide and solid. His shoulders are broad, his chest is deep, you can see the power in his muscular neck and forearms. He's not fat, but he's thick, robust. He is wearing clothes made of animal hides, expertly stitched together. You look at his face. The first thing you notice is the powerful brow, a solid ridge of bone that shades his eyes. His eyes are human. They are intelligent, aware. His nose is large and prominent, wider than any you've ever seen on a modern person. His whole face seems to be pulled forward from the middle. His cheekbones are swept back. His jaw is strong, but when he turns his head, you see that he has no real chin. His lower face just curves back into his neck. His skin is light, maybe freckled from the sun. His hair is thick and dark, perhaps with a reddish tinge. It's cut or worn to a practical length. He is not filthy. He is not a beast. He is a man, a different kind of man. Could a Neanderthal pass for a modern human if you dressed him in a shirt and a hat? This is a classic question, and the answer is maybe from a distance. In a crowd on a subway car, you might not look twice. You might just think he was a rather rugged-looking guy, but up close in a conversation you would know something was different. The combination of the brow, the nose, and the lack of a chin is outside the range of modern human variation. You would see a human, but you would feel you were looking at someone from another place, another time. What did they sound like? This is even more speculative, but we have clues. We have found a Neanderthal hyoid bone. This is a small U-shaped bone in the throat that supports the tongue and is crucial for speech. The Neanderthal hyoid bone is virtually identical to ours. This tells us they had the basic anatomical equipment for speech. They could make the same range of sounds that we can, but their voices might have been different. The shape of their vocal tract was likely not the same as ours because of the different shape of their skull and neck. Some reconstructions suggest their larynx might have been higher in the throat. This, combined with their huge chest and nasal cavity, might have given them a voice that was higher pitched than a modern human of the same size, but also very loud and resonant. It's impossible to know for sure, but it's fascinating to think about. They had language. They spoke to each other around the fire during a hunt while teaching their children. They had voices. The image of the Neanderthal has been on a long journey. It started as a monster, a failed experiment, something to make us feel superior. It was a reflection of our own insecurity about our place in the natural world. We needed a brutish caveman to make ourselves look more civilized, more advanced. But science has stripped away that caricature. Every new discovery, every bone, every fragment of DNA has made the Neanderthal more complex, more capable, and more human. They weren't dumb brutes. They were expert toolmakers. They were skilled, cooperative hunters who took down massive prey. They controlled fire. They lived in complex social groups. They cared for their sick and their elderly. They buried their dead, sometimes with symbolic objects. They made jewelry from eagle talons and shells. They may have even made art. They were a successful and resilient people. They survived for hundreds of thousands of years through multiple ice ages in some of the harshest environments on Earth. They were not a mistake. They were a different parallel branch of humanity that thrived for a very long time. And they are not entirely gone. Their final legacy is inside us. We know from genetic sequencing that when modern humans, our ancestors, expanded out of Africa, they met Neanderthals. And they had children together. Most people today with ancestry outside of Africa carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA in their own genome. Their genes are still here, affecting our hair, our skin, our immune systems. A piece of them survived in us. So when we ask what a real Neanderthal looked like, the answer is not simple. They looked like power. They looked like survival. They looked like an alternate version of humanity, shaped by a different world, a different set of pressures. They look like our cousins. And if you look closely enough in the mirror at the vast and diverse tapestry of human faces, you might even see a faint echo of them looking back. They were not them. They are a part of us. The brutish caveman is dead. In his place stands a complex, adaptable, and intelligent human being who deserves our respect. That is what a real Neanderthal looked like.